What's going on, everybody? This is Brian Mazik, aka Unique Mazik, the hardest working man in sports and gaming. And if you're familiar with this channel and you've been down for a while, then when I say the acronym to you, FPVR, which stands for the Franchise Player Value Rating, then you know what I'm talking about. It's a formula that I created to gauge the 15 most valuable players for any and every NBA franchise, right? So I started this out a little while ago and I did a few teams, but I did not finish. I did not get to the Bulls. And as a matter of fact, the way the formula works, it renews every single year. Every year somebody else has a new chance. So to keep from boring you with the formula, I know you're going to be interested if you're not familiar with it. It's in the description. Check it out. But I'm going to roll right into the top 15 Bulls, counting down from 15 to number 1. All right, now don't hesitate. Please hit that like button right now. Also, don't forget to hit subscribe and to click that notifications bell as well so you can know when new videos drop. Number 15, we're starting out with Jimmy Butler. Now, if you are a new Bulls fan or a younger Bulls fan, you might be thinking, how in the world is Jimmy Butler only number 15? Well, if you take a look at the FPVR, you know that we go a lot of weight is put on the amount of tenure, so seasons that you play with a team. Butler played only 6 seasons with the Bulls, and early on in his career, he didn't get a lot of minutes, so that's why his point per game averages are relatively low. That said, he did have 3 All-Star appearances, 3 All-Defensive teams, and 1 All-NBA. Butler, without a doubt, is the best Bulls player over the past 6 to 10 years, but in the grand scheme of things, his FPVR comes in at 69.5, which makes him 15th on the all-time list. Doesn't mean he's the 15th best talent, just the 15th most accomplished or most valuable player to the franchise. Number 14, BJ Armstrong. He was a member of 3 of the Bulls' 6 NBA championships during their dynasty, their 8-year dynasty. BJ's statistics don't jump out, they don't jump out at you. 10.7 points a game, 3.4 assists. But he was one of the league's first pure 3-point marksmen and definitely one of the first for the Chicago Bulls. He did make it to 1 All-Star team, and he also, like I said, won 3 NBA championships. Remember, the FPVR weighs heavily on tenure and team success. And for him winning 3 rings, that's a pretty big deal, and it sort of compensates for what he may not have had in individual statistics. He walks away with the 69.8 FPVR rating, ranking him number 14. Number 13, John Paxson. Right about now in Chicago, he's not the most popular ex-Bull. Many fans are displeased with the way that he has managed and run the team since he has taken over as the assistant vice president of player personnel, or the vice president of player personnel. But during his time with the Bulls, which was 9 seasons, he also didn't light up statistically, but he is very much known for knocking down clutch jump shots during the Bulls' first three-peat. 3-time NBA champion, did not make an All-Star team, but he had the extra tenure, more tenure than BJ Armstrong, which is what kind of pushes him ahead of BJ and it actually compensates for the All-Star appearance that BJ had that he didn't have. So Paxson checks in with the 71.8 on the FPVR, which is good for number 13. Number 12, the waiter, Toni Kakoc. Now, a lot of people may not give Toni his due, and we're talking purely from a talent standpoint. But I'm going to tell you right now, as somebody who watched every single game of Toni Kakoc's career, throughout his Bulls career, I should say, Toni, from a talent standpoint, could have been a 20-25 point per game scorer if he hadn't played with Michael Jordan and Scottie Pippen. 7 seasons in a Bulls uniform, 3-time NBA champion, a member of the All-Rookie team, 14.1 points a game, big time clutch shooter, 1.1 steals, 3.7 assists, 4.2 rebounds. Adding in the statistics as well as the championships and the tenure, Toni checks in with a 73.2 FPVR, and that is good for number 12 on the all-time list of the Chicago Bulls. Now let's move on to number 11, and it's a more modern Bull, Luol Deng. Now, a lot of Bulls fans kind of felt a little tired of Luol later on in his career. During the end of his stint, it was definitely at a point where I think a lot of Bulls fans were ready to see Luol go. But in his best, Luol was a very good player for the Bulls. 10 seasons, 2-time All-Star, 1-time All-Defense. He was an All-Rookie performer. And as I roll a lot of that off, if you're a Bulls fan, you might have forgotten that Deng was that good for the Bulls. But 16 points per game, a steal, 2.5 assists, and 6.4 rebounds per game during his career. That is a more than solid run as a Chicago Bull, and it lands him with an FPVR of 75.1, which is pretty solid, especially, like I said, if you consider the long history of the Bulls. We're getting to some elite performers in franchise history at this point. Number 10, Chet the Jet Walker. So if you're a young Bulls fan, I probably just lost you at this point. You got to go to the 70s to find Chet Walker. The Bulls had a really solid run in the mid-70s. They made it to the Western Conference Finals one year, and Chet the Jet Walker was a big part of that team. 6 seasons, 4-time All-Star with the Bulls, and he was one of the best scorers on the team at the time. Chet Walker, take a look at these numbers. 20.6 points a game with the Bulls, 2.1 assists, 7.1 rebounds. He would have been higher if the Bulls had more postseason success during his run. But as it stands, he checks in with an FPVR of 76.8, which is still good for the top 10 in Bulls history. And I would say that's pretty significant. So let's move on to number 9, but we're staying almost around that same time. The A-Train, Artis Gilmore, number 9 on the list. One of the more dominant centers during the 70s and the early 80s in the NBA. Didn't really play on a lot of really good teams, but make no mistake about it, especially if you saw him in the ABA, which is not Bulls time, but if you saw him in the ABA, you know how good he was. 7 seasons with the Bulls, actually had 2 different stints. 4-time All-Star, 1-time All-Defense. He also led the league in field goal percentage multiple times. Think DeAndre Jordan, right? With a little bit more back to the basket game. 19.3 points per game, 2 blocks, 2.5 assists, and 11.1 rebounds per game. That's a really good big man. That's him later on his second stint with the Bulls, and you can see that's Michael Jordan laying the ball up in front of him. 79.5 FPVR. Actually, I think that's a block shot by Michael Jordan. 79.5 FPVR for Artis Gilmore. Number 8, Horace Grant. Now, somebody's probably wondering where Dennis Rodman is. And I can make a whole case around this whole thing. But as a person who watched all 6 championship teams for the Bulls, I can tell you that first three-peat was actually, I think, a better team. And I think Horace Grant was a big reason why. 7 seasons, 1-time All-Star, 2-time All-Defensive team. He was on the first 3 NBA championship teams. Horace Grant was a more versatile defender at that point in his career than Rodman was at that point in his career when he was with the Bulls. Grant was less of a one-dimensional player. He could defend guards on the switch. He was a good shot blocker, and he could also knock down that jump shot. He didn't do as much as he could have done because he played with Mike and Scottie, but 80.3 FPVR, and he makes this team. And I'm going to spoiler alert right now, Rodman's not in the top 15. Why? It's really about tenure for the most part. Only 3 seasons with the Bulls. Norm Van Lier, number 7. I know some people are saying, I clicked out as soon as you didn't say Rodman. It's okay. It's all about the numbers. Norm Van Lier, one of the greatest Bulls of all time, one of the most beloved Bulls of all time, one of the best defenders that the Bulls ever had. 7 seasons, 8-time All-Defensive player, 3-time All-Star. One of those All-Defensive teams actually obviously didn't come with the Bulls. He also averaged 12.2 points a game, 0.2 blocks, 1.9 steals, 6.9 assists, and 4.7 rebounds per game. Norm Van Lier was never known as a great shooter, but he was an effective scorer, and he also was on those mid-70s teams that had an opportunity, came close to going to the NBA Finals. His career was good for an 84.3 FPVR, and that puts him well into the top 10. Next up, we got one of my absolute favorite Bulls of all time, Joakim Noah, number 6 overall. Noah's scoring numbers will never wow you, right? But if you look at his rebounding, you look at the assist for a big man, especially 9 seasons, 2 All-Star appearances. He won the Defensive Player of the Year, which was huge. He was a 1-time All-NBA player and 3 times All-Defensive Team. I wish I had a category for being a heart and soul of a team, because that would affect, if that affected the FPVR, he'd go even higher, because the 9.3 points, 1.4 blocks, 3 assists, 9.4 rebounds might not blow you away, but Noah was the heart and soul of the Chicago Bulls teams in the 2010 era, where they were at their best with that Derrick Rose core. 85.4 FPVR for Joakim Noah. Love that image of him as well. Will forever be one of my favorite Bulls. Number 5, Jerry Sloan. This guy, when you want to talk about defense, you want to pretty much say that it begins with him in terms of perimeter defense with the Chicago Bulls. He and Norm Van Lier were a defensive dynamo during the 70s. 10 seasons, 2-time All-Star, 6-time All-Defensive Team. Never a great shooter, but sufficient enough. But he was a guy who played bigger than his size and just a solid player. 19.7 points a game, 6.2 assists, 3.7 rebounds. A absolute stat sheet stuffer for the Bulls, and obviously the long tenure helps as well, and some decent postseason success. He checks in with an FPVR of 88.4. So now we're getting down to the most elite Chicago Bulls of all time, and we got at number 4 my favorite Bull of all time. Not the best Bull, but my personal favorite. Derrick Rose, Chicago's own, at number 4. We all know he could probably be a little higher on this list, maybe even as high as number 2. But we know what happened, injuries and what have you. But 7 seasons, 3-time All-Star, 1-time All-NBA, 1 MVP award, and the Rookie of the Year. When Rose was at his peak with the Bulls, he was among the most exciting players to watch in the game. 19.7 points, almost a steal, 1.7 rebounds, and 6.8 assists per game. Just electric to watch. One of the most beloved Chicago athletes of all time. Checks in at 94.3 on the FPVR, and at a solid number 4 if you consider how much he got done in a short period of time with all of the injuries. Number 3, Butterbean, Bob Love. If you're a young Bulls fan, I may have lost you again. You may be like, what? Who in the world? What? Bob Love? What is that? Michael Jordan became the all-time Bulls scoring leader. That's whose record that he broke. 9 seasons, 3-time All-Star, 3-time All-Defensive Team, All-NBA as well. A big-time scorer for the Chicago Bulls. 21.3 a game in a Bulls uniform, 1.7 assists, 6.8 rebounds, medium-range jump shot, post-game. Bob could put it in the bucket for sure. And he also overcame a really bad speech impediment and a whole bunch of other things. Just an inspirational athlete. FPVR is 95, and that makes him the 3rd most valuable Bull of all time. Number 2, Scottie Pippen. The best Robin to a Batman there has ever been in NBA history, in my personal opinion. It is not easy playing next to the best player on the planet. Not everybody can do it, and not everybody can find themselves and do it, but I'd say he found himself. 12 seasons, 7 All-Stars, 6 All-NBA, 1 All-Star MVP, 8 All-Defensive Teams, and 6 NBA championships. He and one other guy is the only guy that was on the team for all 6 of the Bull championships. 17.7 points a game, 2 steals, 5.2 assists, 6.4 rebounds. You name it, Scottie just about did it. And he really proved himself the year that Mike left, a little over a year that Mike left, and he almost won the MVP, or was at least in the MVP conversation. Yes, the FPR jumps a lot when you get to number 2, 213.2 for Scottie Pippen. Number 1, you didn't even have to ask. Michael Jeffrey Jordan, arguably the greatest player that has ever played the game. Just you can run out of superlatives if you are trying to describe Michael Jordan as a basketball player. 13 seasons. He's a 14-time All-Star overall, but 13 times with the Bulls, 11-time All-NBA, 6 All-Defensive Teams, 5 NBA titles, a partridge in a pear tree, you name it. He did it all. He did it all. 31.5 a game, 6.3 rebounds, 5.4 assists, 2.5 steals, and do you realize what Michael did to the number 23? Do you realize that before Michael, number 23 was just a regular number? You know what's not a regular number? An FPVR of 430.9. Wow. I mean, if you have a moment, just take a second to go and look at Michael Jordan's stat line. Go to Basketball Reference and just look across the board and look at Mike's numbers and just wow yourself, because it's that serious. Well, as usual, I talk sports and I talk gaming, and I'm always appreciative that you watch. God bless and peace.
I'll be weak, I'm rather unique.